It's a Sunday afternoon, and so we welcome you to Musically Speaking. Today, we are going to be discussing aspects of the music industry that is very important, particularly to people like songwriters and record producers. But the public needs to know and understand some of the mechanics of the music business, because the music business is a very complex structure. It is not something simple, and there are many players who ensure that people's rights are protected. Because, if people's rights are not protected, then what happens is that there's a disincentive to create and produce. So, we might think that it's great to get music for free, but if you get it for free, then you might have to suffer the consequences of that, which is poor quality or an absence of music, because people have to pay to produce the music. And so you have these people who act as protectors, who act as guardians, and ensure that the rights of the creators are protected. Now, today, I have two very important people who are going to be talking about protecting these rights and managing them. They are from, what we call collective management organizations. So, for example, when we talk about public performance of works, creative musical works, these people are very integral to the management of that process. So I have from JCAP, Lydia Rose, and from JAMS, we have my my brother Evan Mullins, and the two of them are people who are very savvy about the business of handling people's rights as far as the music business is concerned. So that's what we will be talking about today on Musically Speaking. Lydia, I'm going to go with you first. Tell me, what is JCAP? Just tell me what does JCAP mean to begin with?
Good morning. Well, it's afternoon to your listeners, Clyde, and I really appreciate you having us and my colleague here, Evan, to speak about collective management. Well, JCAP, Jamaica Association of Composers, Authors, Publishers, we protect the rights of songwriters. And when we say songwriters, we are talking about the lyricist, the author who wrote the song, the person who create the musical work, we call them composers, or in Jamaican terms, the person who lit the rhythm or made the rhythm. And we are also talking about the publishers who look about getting the song out in the public sphere for your consumers to actually consume the music. So JCAP protect these primary rights owners. And what we do in protecting is that once someone wants to use the music, even owners also want to use the music, they come to us as the middleman to ensure that we give them the right so that they can use the music. So that's JCAP in summary.
Evan, you're going to tell me what is JAMS now?
Yes. Well, in very simple terms, we are that kind of body, quite similar to JCAP in a sense, but representing a different category of rights owners. We represent the record producers and the performers. So these are, when we say record producers, we're talking about now whether it's an individual who's an investor who's taking on the risk of investing and producing the music, or we're talking about a record label or a record company. So when we say record producer, we're talking about those groups. But we also represent the rights of performers. And when we say performers, we're talking about actual vocalists, the artists and the musicians, the players of instruments. So whenever music gets played, recorded music gets played, producers and performers are also entitled to compensation for those types of uses. And JAMS is that intermediary between those rights owners and the end users, the music users, to facilitate that exchange of access and compensation. And that is what we do. We do it for our Jamaican producers and performers, but we also represent the international catalog here in Jamaica as well. So it's not just a small sphere that we're handling. We're talking about a small company doing big business, global business.
But I want to make a distinction between the roles JCAP and JAMS play with regard to the protection of rights and the specific rights that are protected by these organizations, because you are primarily concerned with public performance. Is that correct? Both of your entities. In other words, if I am talking about the rights to copy a work, right? I wouldn't use a sample. I wouldn't come to you or to Lydia for that. I would go to the publishers of the person for that. But if not, is that correct?
Well, there are some nuances there.
There's some nuances.
Yes.
So I wanted
So
to go into that for me, because
you would definitely come to JCAP because, as I had said, that we represent publishers.
So you're not dealing just with public performance. Is that
No,
what you're saying?
we don't. We deal with, JCAP deal with mechanical rights, synchronization rights, and the public performance rights.
Was that always a part of JCAP's remit?
Always.
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 Okay.
Always.
Okay, and Evan, you're saying that there are some nuances there.
Yes, because the rights that you're speaking of, there are about 5 major categories of rights that are granted to rights owners.
Mm-hmm.
The right to make copies, as you have spoken to, the right to distribute, public performance, broadcasting, and making available online.
Mm-hmm.
Typically, it's the broadcasting and the public performance rights which would come to us. However, there's one aspect of the reproduction right or the making copies right, which we also handle. And that has to do now with when you have, for instance, sound systems, selectors or sound system owners who have made copies of the music for the purpose of playing.
What does that mean? Explain that to me.
In other words, when you buy a CD or you buy a vinyl or MP3 or don't, whatever the case is, when you buy a copy of a record, you get certain rights with it. You get the right to play it for your own personal, private domestic consumption,
yes, right.
your home, your car, and so forth. However, once you now take those songs, that catalog or that set of songs, and you start to now play it commercially to earn from it, that right did not come when you bought that work.
Right, so that right now is a public performance right.
You now have to get permission now for those copies that you have made. So you've made copies of the work, right, for your own personal use. But if you're going to take those copies now for the purpose of now playing at a session or even at your radio station, the commercial use of those copies now, you need permission from the master rights owners to have those copies. Yes?
So even if I don't make a copy of your recording and I'm a sound system operator and I am going to play out at a session, you are concerned with the rights that are represented there, because that would be a public performance right.
So that is there. That's a normal area that we focus on, which is a public performance.
Right.
Yes. But we just wanted to make it clear that there's also that underlining aspect.
Yes.
So for clarity, what we're saying, the Copyright Act state that once you're making a copy under both rights, then it doesn't matter who you are, and everyone was speaking about the disc jockey, right? If you're making a copy for personal use, not only the disc jockey alone, because you have the persons on the road who make copies of works and they go and they sell. You must seek permission for that. So in either case, in terms of the DJ, you would have to seek permission, one for the master rights and one for copying of the works to perform the function that you do when you go to play the music.
I want to talk to you both about blanket rights, because that's an important consideration. Many times people don't understand that in order to play somebody's music, publicly, you need to get permission from them. And what happens is that if you were to have a session and you were to go to all the people whose rights are represented, you wouldn't be able to keep a session because you don't even know some of the people or their contact. Tell us about blanket licenses and what does that mean?
Okay, so I'll go for it. So blanket license for JCAP is used in a different category. We will give blanket license to businesses, radio station like Bridge, FM, and big commercial business, because the premise is at any point in time you really do not know what music you'll be using. So we give a blanket license for the entire year to businesses. For parties and concerts, what we do, we give a transactional license because you are using the music one time, supposedly one day throughout the year. So for us, there's a difference between blanket license and
transactional license. So
right.
one is one time and blanket license
is for the
entire year. Yes.
Yes, because it presupposes that during the entire year, you really don't know which music you'll be using. As a radio station, different disc jockey on the radio station would be using different music from the library.
And the blanket license mean that that is any kind of music that is published.
Correct. And as Evan had said before, we also represent the international catalog through reciprocal. So we will give you the permission once you have taken out that blanket license to use just about any music once it's covered.
So if you have a session, it is important that you secure the rights to use the songs both from jams and from JCAP
for recorded music.
So explain the process, Lydia, and then Evan.
Okay, all right. So one distinction, however, must be made is that whereas JCAP, you'd have to seek permission for all music usage, whether it be recorded or live. So that's one of the main difference with transactional license permits, is that JCAP collect on live music and recorded music, whilst JAM collects on recorded music.
And JAMS is, you are protecting the publishers and the songwriter while he's protecting the producers
and the
performers. Yes.
Correct. So for us, you would, and I must say to the public, music is just not free, because we must remember that intellectual property, someone created, and they went to the studio and they expend money to create what it is that you listen to, or that a lot of persons in Jamaica, because we have party almost every day, make money and make a livelihood from. So we want you to appreciate that you must come and seek a permit, we call it a license, to have these function. And you just need to call us, and we will, to take a license from JCAP takes approximately 15 minutes. If you're, we are online, you can do it through our NCB portal, and you can do it through Paymaster portal, or you can just call us and we do it online. So it is a simple matter for us.
So, Evan, in a situation where there's a stage show, you would not be expected to generate any revenue for your members from the actual performances on stage, would you?
Correct. So but
if there is a sound system being played there,
yes,
then that's where you would make money for your. But Lydia would be making money for her members by people performing either
live
on the sound system or when they are performing live.
Yes.
Correct.
Now, it is important that people understand that the artist, even an artist, when he performs, he should understand that the songwriter needs to be paid.
Correct.
That's important. Now, Evan, you were talking, we've been talking about the business of reciprocity and reciprocal payments and all of that, and that both of you would represent organizations which have reciprocal arrangements with your own your local body. In your case, Evan, there are jurisdictions, particularly in the United States, where performers are not given rights to public performance, particularly in the United States. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Okay, sure. So let's start with the basics of it.
Of reciprocity.
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
And just the scope of what we cover, so that your promoters who are listening, your hoteliers, your club owners who are listening get a clear sense of the scale of representation. I want to start there. So when we say reciprocity, we're talking about having arrangements with over 40 different collecting societies globally across, currently many countries. Yes, and so more than 75% of the international catalog, for instance, comes to us by way of direct arrangements with what we call the majors, the Sony, Universal, Warner, etc. The remaining 25% of the international catalog comes to us by way of these reciprocal arrangements covering UK, US, all the major markets, and further field markets. Now, in terms of when music is used in the US for public performance and whether or not the performer or the producer earns there, the audience needs to understand this. And our members, the producers, our industry needs to understand this. The US copyright laws are a little different from the Jamaican copyright law, from the UK copyright law, and so forth, right? There are elements that are quite different.
Right.
So within the US, producers and performers earn 0 cents, not a penny, when their music is played
on radio,
on terrestrial AM, FM radio, or just in the public speech. Right. So they do not have that right currently. They've always been lobbying and advocacy.
Only on digital.
Getting to that.
Okay.
Right. Yes.
Okay.
Just to clear up that end of it first.
Right.
So AM and FM radio. So your song gets spun on, it gets played on Hot 97, for instance.
You have no money to get as a
Producers have
performer.
nothing to get there. Neither the artists. Right. However, there are rights granted to those groups, the producers and performers or artists, on digital channels, digital performance.
So a Sirius
satellite radio.
Yes.
And webcasting activity, meaning online on your webcast and so forth. So in the digital realm, the rights exist for producers and performers to earn. So you get played on Sirius XM or Pandora, etc., then you're able to earn. But FM radio, AM radio, nothing there. However, the songwriters, composers get paid from all the sources.
From all the sources, yes.
Yes.
So I wanted to also expand on the fact that Europe is different.
Yes. I mean, Europe is different, and so all of the various sources, channels, avenues are monetized, meaning that producers and artists get from all this, whether it's AM radio, FM radio, digital sources. We are able to capitalize on all the sources in the European market, right? Commonwealth market, Asian markets, and so forth. The US, however, they do have these particular restrictions in their Copyright Act, you know. So a lot of our revenue, for instance, in terms of international flows or flows from international sources, comes largely from UK, Europe, and Asian markets. The bulk of our foreign royalties right now coming from those markets.
Reciprocity. We look at the issue of how payments and settlements are done. Do we have a net inflow or outflow from these reciprocal arrangements?
Okay.
Are we using too much foreign music in Jamaica? Is that a concern? And what kind of policy prescription would you suggest to rectify this particular situation?
All right, I'm going to let Lydia go ahead first, because our situation is a bit different, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
In terms of whether we have more going out, I would say yes. What we and the issue again is not about music being played in as much as how much is being played of our music overseas. Okay, so even in the U.S. market, we are comparing 2 million person, 2.5, probably our We are now at 3 million in Jamaica to 300 million in the US. Vast areas. Europe, if we look at it as a block, vast areas of persons. So therefore, our music somehow get lost at times in the amount of music that is played. However, for JCAP, tours, when our members go on tours, it's captured 100%, and we get a lot of money there. So we do earn a lot of hard currency
from tours.
From tours, when our members go on tours.
What about airplay, particularly in the United States, which is considered an important market?
And also we do get, because as you know, there's 4 societies in the US that we have reciprocal with, and the 2 major
ASCAP and
BMI. You also have SASAC, and you have royalty, another new one. Okay, we get a lot of money from ASCAP, BMI, and SASAC. However, the issue with those societies is that they do not necessarily capture the mama and papa store that our local music is played in. Because, again, their music is so much more than the mama and papa store. So we will get less from radio play and more from tours in the US.
Okay.
If you look at it that way. But we do have a net export. And again, that also has to do with our foreign currency. Because if we are getting 40 million coming in, and we are sending 40 million, 50 million Jamaican or 60 million going out, it's affected by our foreign currency.
So our foreign exchange position is a big determinant as to whether we are net exporter or importer.
Yes.
So it's not necessarily a reflection of the performance of our music, essentially, but it might be a function of the performance of our own
environment
economy.
that we operate in.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, for us, it's slightly different, because even though within Jamaica, across Radioland, across all the different stations that we have, I think there is a net, playing of foreign content. There's a larger share of foreign content overall across Jamaican radio waves. And so if you're to take it from that standpoint, then automatically you would consider that more royalties are flowing out than is remaining. Automatically, if you look at it from that standpoint.
Yeah, but with a deeper analysis.
But a deeper analysis, it's not always so, right?
So those people who are advocating that maybe all the stations should go all Jamaican music.
Absolutely not.
Absolutely
It's not.
not.
I would not advocate for that. Variety is good. Variety is important. And of course, for radio stations to remain competitive
And viable, yes.
Yes, I think they need to have that sort of control over their programming content to remain competitive. So I think I would not advocate for everybody playing Jamaican music, but certainly we would love to see more Jamaican music being played by more stations. So if you have a 24-hour slot, then chalk out a part of that for local content. Allow for some share of that to be part of your programming. That's what we'd advocate for.
Well, JCAP, we're advocating for a quota system.
Yeah.
Let's put that out there, because we find that in Jamaica, just like with pain, persons will. I've always said you can't have a party without music, right? Or else, what is it you're having? Just a social. But persons, and that should be your first budget items. But no, it is almost the last that we see. And persons will quickly more pay the government requirement than get the permit for music. So in Jamaica, regulation play a lot of role. So we can always say, yes, we will sit back and hope and ask for persons to always do the right thing. It does not work in Jamaica from our standpoint. So we are saying, even if we say have radios during a certain time of the day or whatever slot, play, Jamaican music via a quota system, it is better for us. So regulating what radio should play, we think and we know that it would be in more of our interest, even for the development of the music, than to rely on the owners of these commercial entities to decide that that's what they want to do.
But you are mindful of the concern that Evan has raised.
No, we're very mindful, and then therefore we are not saying that we are going to ask for a 60% or a 50% or just a percentage to ensure that the music is always there and it also speaks to the development. Because right now, as we see it, a lot of our members, they complain there is a blockage with the radio. Gone are the days where they can take in their masters, etc., to the library. They don't even have access to your libraries anymore. They have to know someone to actually be able to get the music into the radio station to play. And persons are saying with social media, radio is dying out. No, radio is totally relevant in ensuring that the public hear the music that is in even in the dancehall space. Because a lot of Jamaicans don't go to the dancehall space and they rely on radio for some sort of feedback, etc. So what we are saying is, being mindful that we want our music to continue to develop and to be able to be known internationally, etc. We want to rely on radio to feed it to the public, etc. And in that regard, we're asking for a quota system.
Yeah, Clyde, listen, I don't want to be misunderstood in my earlier pronouncements. We're totally in support of even a quota system. That is something, however, which would need to be very carefully developed and implemented, because that could actually work in the reverse. It could actually harm the same broadcasters that we're trying to get to support us, could harm them.
Yeah, because it could make them not viable.
Not as competitive, right, and not as viable. However, the importance of having more local music played, Clyde, is that it allows for the industry to develop. So a lot of what we are hearing now, for instance, in terms of our music as a country, it is driven to a very large extent on what we have come to know as, for instance, payola, whether that's in the dancehall or elsewhere. And so, for the large part, a very narrow band of songs gets played over and over at any given point in time, whereas some of the really great music that is still being made, excellent music that's still being made, not getting the time of day.
Let me challenge that.
Not getting the time of day on air.
Let me challenge that position, because there are some who argue that payola introduces a greater amount of diversity in the offering, because songs that perhaps would not be able to secure airplay normally are able to do so because you can pay for it.
But there's only 24 hours in any given day. And so if payola is dominating in terms of the number of songs which gets played in that 24-hour block, other songs, good songs or other songs, will not get any time of that 24-hour slot unless it is being fueled by payola, by money. And I'm saying that is something that has, I think, been harming the industry.
What is a recommendation from agencies such as
to address something like
JCAP and JAMS to address the challenge of payola?
All right. So before we move to the solution, it always amazes us in our industry to say, why is it the locals have to pay to play their music, but foreign songs is played free, and immense amount of foreign songs is played free. It amazes me. All right, so if the broadcasters can think about that, because we don't need payola to play our song. If we go back to where libraries actually function as libraries, and even if every song get a minute or two, and let the public decide which one they really want to listen to over time, have a call-in, whatever, we can ensure that the songs that are being bottlenecked out, etc., get their time of day on radio, right?
I think the Broadcasting Commission has done quite a bit of work, though, Clyde, in terms of consultations with the industry over a number of years. And so they actually have some measures which have been proposed. I think it's probably even at the cabinet stage right now. For instance, ensuring that each radio station must have a library or a director, a librarian, for instance, who controls playlists, for instance. So it's not just the 5 or 6 songs which are something's happening around, but a more extensive playlist is managed.
When we come back, we are going to be talking about the distinction between playlist and music sheet, and those things, because I think there is a lack of understanding of the differences which exist, musically speaking. This is Mother's Day, and Lydia is a mom.
Yes, I
Happy
am.
Mother's Day, Lydia.
Thank you.
And there's so many other moms. Dan, I don't know if that would be premature for me to to say Happy Mother's Day to you, but your day will come, I guess. I don't know. I want to, wish a couple of moms Happy Mother's Day. My own wife, who I think is a fabulous, phenomenal mom. Sometimes she mothers me too. My sister Shireen, who is an exceptional mom too, and my own mom. Well, she's not around. She was a force of nature, brilliant woman, strong woman. I think my siblings will say that she spoiled me. And I think if there is one flaw in her system, was that she didn't allow me to acquire the domestic skills that I should have, and many times have been blamed, and she has been criticized for that. But I mean, listen, nobody's perfect, and so I mean, I know I've had a great mom, and I've want to say hello to my aunt Doreen Harrison. Yes, she's a fabulous mom, still going strong. And there are so many people who have had these great moms, and you have to give thanks for them. And some are maybe not as great in your estimation, but the mere fact that they brought you life is so important, and that you can give thanks for. And so let us give thanks, for all the ladies. And if you're talking about music, mamas have inspired so many songs. Fathers run a far second. Today's Mother's Day, and everywhere is busy. You go to the Terra Nova or any of these places where they're serving lunches and brunches and all of that, and they're full. And I was just talking with Evan, and I said, but on Father's Day you can run through these places and you don't bump into anybody. And the problem is, I think that Jamaican fathers have been given a bad rap.
Yes,
because
yes.
I don't think that Jamaican dads are as bad as many people make them out to be. Well, I mean, the example I have of a father is certainly runs totally opposite to that. And you talk about, like Dennis Howard will tell you. I mean, yesterday we were celebrating his father, Jimmy Sola's 80th birthday, and I mean, he idolizes his father, and for good reason. And we hail Jimmy Sola as a father who he has been able to inspire his children and his grandchildren and other people's children. And I want to also hail another father, Father Stone, Nadine Sutherland's father, who had his birthday this week too. A great father. These are people who are fathers who have demonstrated that their children can rely on them, and they have shown their children the right path. And we have to salute these men, and we have to hold them up as examples, because too often we put forward the deadbeat dads as the examples. So we want to hail some of the great fathers, and many fathers who have, I wouldn't say become mothers, because no father can become a mother. A mother is special, but who have had to double up and do things that mothers would and should do. And so we have to salute those people. Musically speaking, today it's Mother's Day, and we're talking collection, how we deal with the money that is generated by people's creativity. We were talking before the break. We wanted to look at the issue of playlists and music sheet, because there is a great confusion when you hear people talk in the public. They conflate the two, and it is important to make that distinction: what is a playlist and what it serves, and also what is a music sheet and what that represents. So who's going to take the first shot at it?
I'll allow Evan, master rights.
Certainly as a broadcaster, Clyde, I think probably you are very well placed to sort of make that distinction.
Yes.
Yes. So I'd love for you to actually.
Well, you want me to talk about it?
Yes, please, because you're a broadcaster, and
right.
It is this broadcasters are really the source
Well,
to a very large extent of where.
Okay. So a playlist is supposed to be something universal. It is a set of songs that are allowed and permitted by a radio station. So that would be the songs that are also given approval or not disapproved by agencies of the state, such as the Broadcasting Commission. So it's a universal set of songs that you have, and that is supposed to be part of what the station determines to be the songs which it will permit to be played on the air. Now, the music sheet is something that is more personal to the presenter.
Yes.
And that is something that up to some time ago was more important to agencies like yours,
Yes.
Because it allowed for tracking. And it also allowed for monitoring for people like me internally. If I want to see what is happening as far as my presenters are concerned, then I would need to approve of this music sheet.
Right.
Now, the thing is that programmers and program directors should give prior approval for the generation of music sheets.
Yes.
That is not happening in most instances in Jamaica. And that, a number of arguments have been adduced for that, including, you don't want to restrict individual creativity in terms of what they do on the air. But it's important that you exercise that function, however limited you do so, because you ultimately are liable to agencies like JCAP, like JAMS, and the Broadcasting Commission. And so if you're a broadcaster, a radio station, then it's incumbent on you to understand that the buck stops with you and not with your presenter. And therefore you can't say, boy, I never know where I play.
And the music sheet, some would say music log, is still extremely important in the overall scheme and overall process that we run, right? In terms of ensuring that at the distribution end now.
When you're dealing with allocating payments to your members.
Right.
The sheet is still very much an important part of that process.
But how important is it now, given that you have digital monitoring,
Right.
Yes.
like BMAT and all of that?
Yes.
Just explain BMAT and what that does for me.
All right. Well, technology has improved drastically to allow for automated tracking of songs that are played by radio stations like yours. So from as far back as 2012, we introduced into Jamaica that technology, the BMAT system, where all radio stations, we were able to begin tracking every song of our members that were played on radio stations. So within, let's say, an hour after each song was played, we can then generate a report that tells us what song was played, how long it was played for, the name of the song, the artist name, label name, all of that level of detail comes out on a report to us within a short period of time after the songs are played. And that is then part of the process, part of what is used to then distribute the royalties to the members, to know how many times your songs were played, which label it came out on, etc., and how much royalties to be allocated. However, the music sheets, as you've called them, some say music logs, those still play a part in the distribution process, because there are members who, as soon as they leave the studio, they head straight over to the broadcasters to hand over music to be played. And so songs begin to get played long before they are registered with the society. And what gets monitored by the tracking system are larger songs that have been registered, where we already get a fingerprint.
Yeah, the code.
We get a
No, I mean, I
fingerprint.
think you need to speak to that issue of the
Code
coding.
as well. Okay, right. The system, however, in Jamaica, it relies primarily on the fingerprint of the song, not so much the code. The code is used for other purposes, which I'll get to. But once you have produced a song and you are ready to release it, or you have released it, you register that song with Jams or with JCAP.
Or both.
Or both, yes.
Both.
And we take a fingerprint of that. That basically goes into the monitoring system, and it logs a fingerprint of the song, a couple seconds of the song. So every time that song is played on any radio station at all in Jamaica, the system is able to identify in a very precise manner that is that specific song that was played, and therefore we can account to the member for those plays. The music sheets, however, still come into play, because, like I said, if those songs were not registered, we now have to rely on a different means by which to identify that
So
the
that's
songs
a
were
backup.
played.
So that's a backup
It
system.
complements
Yes.
what we currently use, right? And it also helps to cross-check as well, to make sure that the automated system is doing what it's supposed to do. So it's a cross-checking mechanism still at the end of the day, right?
In fact, Clyde, not only is it important that we use the music logs, music sheet that we get from the radio stations to as a backup, because members also come in and they will say to us, but on this program, this my song was played, and because the fingerprint is not yet in the system, we have to manually go back to those music sheets, look for that song, and then we are able to actually ask our member to urgently give it to us to upload in BMAT, or ourselves, we have to ensure that it goes in the distribution system for payment.
An important question for me. Both of you spoke of reciprocity and those kinds of arrangements between similar agencies outside of Jamaica. A number of Jamaicans, whether producers or songwriters, performers, would be affiliated with your partners overseas, so an ASCAP, BMI, a JCAP, and your partners overseas. Now, explain to me why it would be advantageous for me not to be affiliated with ASCAP or BMI and be affiliated with a JCAP, for example. Tell me the advantage.
Okay, well, the first thing for JCAP, you don't have to expend any money to come to our doors. We operate an open door policy. So, I mean, ASCAP, BMI, you are trying to get them. We have had persons say why they come. They're trying to get them on the phone, or short of taking a flight to the U.S. And even if you take a flight to the U.S., there's no guarantee that you will see anybody to speak to you. Mm-hmm. We have a totally open door policy where you can come in. Any issues that you have locally with your songs, we are able to resolve. We are able to reach out to your partners as well. In terms of copyright splits, where a lot of times there are issues with it, we are able to mediate, and we are able to have some resolve so that you can be paid. Right. In terms of registration, we are just as digital as our overseas affiliates. So you won't be short of any service that you will get in terms of your song's registration. And most importantly, even if you register and in our international market and we go mainly by the European directives, because our CSAC, who we are associated with, is actually located in Europe, and their mantra is that every songwriter must be allowed to join whichever society they want, although it is territorial.
But
so
hold on.
even though,
But let me ask you. Let me stick a pin there. I can't. I maybe. If I write one song, I can't come to JCAP and become a member.
Yes,
I
you can.
have to have a couple of songs. That's what I
Well,
understand. Tell me about that.
all right, so before I go to that,
All right.
most importantly, if you join a society like, I'll say BMI, because they are very dominant, they actually come into our market and seek membership. We still have to collect your money here, right, when your song is played here, and we still have to remit it to BMI. So then therefore
So you get less. You mean you get
yeah,
less?
you get less because we are going to take out our administrative cost. And when I reach BMI, they're also going to take out their administrative cost. So what we have done is allow you to, if you do want to associate, there we have a split membership. It's not something that we say that it's good for you, but in terms of to ensuring our nationals do earn and not earn less, we enable, we ask
So it can be an
therefore
ASCAP member and a JCAP
and a
member.
JCAP member, if
Okay.
you so want. It's not in your best interest, but we do facilitate that. Okay? And to the question you ask.
Which the question about
But Clyde,
eh?
it comes down to one word for us: service.
Yes.
Service. And let me explain what I mean by that. You're free to join any society that you want. Okay. However, you have collecting societies that are here on the ground. You can walk into the office on any given work day, Mondays to Fridays. Registration is a key part of this thing now.
Yeah, but I asked Lydia. I can't come into JCAP and maybe jams with one song.
Oh, right. No, you for JCAP, yes, you can. We have a minimum of 3 songs. Okay? But the key which a lot of persons would say, okay, you must remember, Clyde, that the name, it tells you, collective management organization. If we are unable to collect for you, then you are going to be disgruntled. So if you do not have something that is commercially out there.
So it's a question, it's a function of transaction costs.
It is a function.
Absolutely.
It's straight a function of transactional costs. And we will have
And if I have
persons.
one tune, it don't profitable for you. You don't want to work for people who just one song.
The moment somebody walks through the door, Clyde, the moment someone walks through that door, the cost starts to, the needle on cost starts to move.
Start to move because it's your time. It's your
it's very
staff time.
valuable time to manage these rights.
I want to talk about transaction costs because that is very, very important, because the relative size of a JCAP or a JAMS to an ASCAP or a similar organization means that proportionately their transaction costs are higher than these bigger international organizations.
Yes.
So I want to deal with that when I come back. Musically speaking, the man they call Vibes Cartel, Adisha Palmer. This is selection from my producer Denelia Doyle. She loves this one. Yeah, the softer side of Vibes Cartel. Yes. So before we went to the break, we were talking about transaction costs and how important that is. And I was raising the issue of the relative proportion of transaction costs vis-a-vis large agencies like ASCAP and smaller ones like JCAP and JAMS. You want to elaborate on that, Lydia and Evan, in terms of how it affects payout, for example, vis-a-vis these large agencies and the smaller ones? Can you speak to that?
All right. So if you look at markets, let's start with the U.S. market as a prime example. Our counterpart in the US is called Sound Exchange. Lydia's counterpart in the US is BMI,
And ASCAP.
and SASAC, right? Ours is, there's just one for our Sound Exchange. Sound Exchange is now approaching close to $1 billion per year in terms of their income, their revenues, right? So that's a massive market. Now, in terms of their cost, their cost is relatively small compared to that revenue base. They're now running about 6, maybe 7% cost to revenue. And that's really impressive, which means that close to 93, 94% of what is made then goes out to the rights owners. We are, however, in a completely different context. We're operating a very, very small market, a very tough market as well.
And it's not because you're inefficient, it's because there are certain things that have to be done
Yes.
and have to be paid for.
Have to
And
be paid
therefore, because your base is much smaller,
smaller, but you still have to cover those
cost,
essentials.
the essential cost is going to constitute
Right.
a bigger portion,
A bigger portion.
of your
Right.
cost. Yeah.
So our cost as a portion of revenue is actually quite high, or much higher than a Sound Exchange.
Right.
And so, of course, that reduces the amount available for distribution.
And people must, and members should understand this, because it is the cost of, is not that you are more expensive in
Not at all.
real terms
Not at
in
all.
doing business, but it is because proportionately less is available when you apply the cost for delivering the service.
Yes. And it's a tough market. And I'll give you an example, right? I've sent my licensing officer out, for instance, into the country, in St. Elizabeth and so forth, to say, let us also get some of these bars and restaurants and so forth licensed. And my licensing officer had to take up his foot into his hand and make his escape. Because can you imagine, persons who are used to playing music on a daily basis for years, free, now being told that in order to play, you have to pay. It's not an easy thing to understand.
No,
to begin with.
that's tough. Now,
It's tough.
You see, in relation to live events like shows and all of that, you're in a better position because you have the protection of the state to some extent in securing those things. But
not only that, there are those who actually do understand.
That's
they do
exactly
understand.
what I was going to say.
And in fact, some of them are members. They are members. However, they are the
they're not
ones.
paying. So, in other words,
They want to benefit from the system without contributing to the system. Yes.
But I must say, Clyde, that I do believe between JCAP and JAMS, the amount of money we have spent on advertisement.
No, because that's what I was going to ask. No, because I was going to ask about the public education side of this. Because my feeling is that there might be a lot of people who, and that's why I thought this program was essential, because I don't think a lot of people understand the real significance to the industry of these CMOs and what they really do to ensure that the music industry remains viable.
I've had big business who we would say would understand more than a small business. And we find that even on the party scene, the little man, they're quicker to pay than the big promoters, right? So for us, it's not. I think we have passed the stage of understanding. I think it's we operate in an environment just like with taxes. If people are not forced to pay their tax, they really don't care and they really don't pay. So persons just want to ensure that they enjoy the benefit of earning from others' intellectual property without actually thinking of what exactly the person went through, and they really don't care about paying. It in our world, it is catch me if you can, right? So for JCAP, we have had to even carry big business to courts, and even when they say they know, they want one business person say, okay, I'm willing to pay, but I'm willing to pay what I want to pay, right? And we say to the person, but we are not telling you how to price your goods or price your items. We are not in that field. So why is it you are telling us that whatever was expended by our members, you can tell us what to collect?
So, in other words, if I'm a manufacturer I would have to pay for all the raw material inputs
Yes.
Correct.
for my product. And therefore, what you're saying to the promoter is that one of the key ingredient in your product, which is entertainment,
Yes.
is the music.
Correct.
And you should pay the providers of this.
Correct.
Yes.
And in fact, when we do a study, even we speak about the US, etc., our fees are still very, very, very low, because we are always being told that the environment we operate in, people cannot pay. So for permits, we have not changed our fee from I've been at JCAP, which is from 2013. We have not changed our fees.
So this is why you said to me that touring is a lucrative
For our
segment,
members.
yeah,
Yes.
for your members, because they charge a higher rate for shows in the United States, and that feeds back to you.
Correct.
And the same applies.
Yeah, the same thing applies. So in France and all of those major markets, key markets, the rate that they charge for permits, that the collecting society there charges for a permit or a license is quite high. 4, 5, 6, up to 8% they will charge. We're actually sometimes below 2% in terms of what we're charging in the marketplace.
Correct.
You know?
And we're still being asked to discount it even further.
Yes.
My colleagues in the Caribbean fare much better than us in Jamaica. When they charge, because they have where they have their courts are more easily accessible, and they can just take out an injunction right before you can perform.
We can't. You don't have that power to take out an injunction.
We do have the power,
But you
but
don't
we
exercise it.
do not exercise the power, because we also have to do a balance.
So it's a sensitivity thing, because
Yes.
you don't want to ruin people economically. So
Right.
you
So when we sit here and say we operate in a tough market, it's not only running for our lives, it's a really tough market.
So you're saying that the legislative arrangement and the regulatory arrangements are in place for you to exercise that authority, but you sometimes decide not to do so, given the prevailing circumstances. Is that a
That's
good
exactly
way?
what we're saying. That's exactly what we're saying. And in fact, when we have been lobbying for quite a while, so we do have the copyright law, which you state is a regulatory, but we have been lobbying to also include in the Copyright Act, or in one of the Entertainment Act or noise abatement, etc., that persons are required to take out their license a minimum of 10 days before. In that way, we will get better. A better way to monitor, a better way to enforce, because the JCF will now be able to know that, okay, it's not the last minute or hour before these persons that we can actually go and tell them that they are breaking the act and then create a riot. That 10-day will give us and everybody a much better way to regulate, a much better and efficient system for us to collect.
But coordination amongst the other permit granting agencies, do you think it's good enough as far as you are concerned, in terms of you're having the proper kind of enforcement?
The JCF is they work with us, and I must say that we do appreciate on behalf. I can speak for JCAP and JAMS. The JCF they're the only enforcement arm in Jamaica, as you can appreciate. But when we do go to them, the majority do assist and ensure that the law is not broken. But in terms of other government agency that has to grant permit, like the parish councils, etc. We do work with them, but it's two different things. So they can't depend on us and we can't depend on them, although we try to partner together, right? Because you must you can appreciate that government
they have
is
no
just,
legal. They would have no legal arrangement to say, well,
exactly.
you have to register with JAMS and JCAP
and to ensure you collect, or we can't give you until you show those licenses.
Right. So
it is really a partnership.
So in other words, there needs to be that piece of legislation,
correct,
that would say, look, you cannot
Give your license.
Yes,
before
yes.
you see the music license.
So
that's really what it is.
Right.
But I mean, before we move on from that, Clyde, and Lydia spoke to it, the JCF really is that body. However, what we've seen, though, despite the really good support from the police.
So when you say the JCF is that body, do you mean that the JCF can say to a promoter before the event is held, look, I will prevent you from staging this event because you don't have your permit?
There are two stages to that process.
Mm-hmm.
The police will say to you that you need to go, you have to go to the police first and foremost, you're staging an event. That's the first stop typically.
Mm-hmm.
And they will say to you, you're going to need a parish council, JAMS, JCAP, fire service, etc.
Is that a convention or is this the law?
Convention.
Okay.
Convention. However, once you now get to the stage where the police has granted approval for you to go and have an event, with or without a JAMS or JCAP permit, the very moment you now begin to play music, you're now, without these permits, the copyright permits, you're now in the realm of infringement. And once you get to that stage, the police are actually now empowered
to shut you off.
Yes, to say, where is your permit to be playing music? And they can shut you off.
So they can't do it preemptively.
Correct.
They can't. So the police they don't have the power to do it preemptively.
Which is what we're trying. Which
also,
was
that's
speaking
what the
to
legislation
10 days beforehand
to do it
Correct.
preemptively.
To give us and the police more room now to proper enforcement
and efficiency in our industry.
Right. Yeah.
I want to move to another area, and that's politics. I suppose it could come down to issues of moral rights and all of that. The use of my song on a political platform. Now, I know if my song is going to be used in an ad, I mean, permission would have to be secured from my publishers for it to be used in a political ad. But I'm talking about using my music on a political platform. Now, there are people who have been branded sometimes unwittingly because they are not involved in the political process, but somebody takes their music, uses it on the platform, and it is associated with a particular political campaign. I can think of Delroy Wilson's Better Must Come, in that 1972 campaign with Michael Manley, and I'm not sure if Delroy was actually a sympathizer of the PNP, but his song was used. Now, when we're talking about blanket rights and the assignment of these rights, is there any kind of arrangement where, as an individual, I can exercise my right? Because I would imagine for a political campaign, if they're having an event, say a rally or something like that, then they should be asked to pay.
Yes.
And do they pay?
Actually, yes. Funny enough, and many persons may not be aware of this or think it doesn't happen, but both political parties, the two main political parties,
they pay up front.
They have been, to their credit.
Yes.
To their credit.
Well, that's good.
There was a time, I can tell you this, there was a time when they were not quite compliant. However, over the years, based on our working with them and enforcement from our end, both political parties are now at the stage where they are quite compliant. So they're staging their rallies or having their conference, they apply in advance for their permits. They get the permit, they pay their copyright fees. So that is where we are now. There was, in fact, that time when they were just another entity that was very difficult to deal with. They are both now very compliant. However, in terms of now getting the kind of permission, or if you as an artist would not want for your song to be included as part of a rally,
a public performance,
because you do not want it, right?
Yes.
As an artist or as a writer, moral rights is there to protect you. You can then seek to possibly take some action where that is concerned. If you do not want your music to be associated.
But what I mean, can you grant selective permission?
No.
As because I know that's a challenge.
Clyde, you must remember that what we do is give permission for public performance, right? And at any point in time, we do not know the music that will be selected. That's one of the downfall. But where I'm going to is, we are not, we speak of moral rights, and moral rights kick in when you hear your music out there, and then you say, I don't
it's
want
used in a context that
to be
that you don't want it to be used in.
At that point, you can notify, or you can ask the CMOs to notify the persons to pull or to desist.
And what if they don't pull? What authority does the CMO or the songwriter?
The songwriter has authority under moral rights, so they can get a lawyer to ask them to cease and desist. Yeah. They have that right. The law gives them that.
And they have injunctive relief, in other words.
They do.
So they could, they
do.
Yes.
Okay.
They
do.
Yes.
They do.
Okay.
The law gives them that right.
Right. Because what they have are what are called exclusive rights, So we can act on it because the exclusive rights are passed on to us to manage, and exclusive rights simply means that we can withhold the use of a particular work. We can prevent its use.
So you're saying that even in the provision of these blanket rights, there are exceptions.
There can be.
Or can be exceptions.
There can be. Once the request is made, then there is exception because the request is made. It's a written request.
Right. Once you, however, have passed the right on to the CMOs, you cannot then go behind the CMO's back and approach the end user to say, don't use my song. The CMO acts on your behalf.
Right.
Right. And so you make that you try to remedy through the CMO. Right. Except in the case of the moral rights element of it. You can take care of that
they have
with
that
yourself.
Exclusive right.
You maintain that exclusive right.
Yes.
So you can then get an attorney to act on your behalf in that regard.
I want to talk to you both about rights extension.
I love this discussion, I love this discussion.
Which one? The one about rights extension?
Yes. Yes. And you probably can tell why I love this. Yeah.
And the public domain. I would want you, for example, to talk to me about material falling into the public domain. Just explain what does that mean, the implications in terms of earnings, and what the public can do with that particular work that has fallen into the public domain.
All right. So I'm going to go ahead, and I'm sure Lydia will also contribute to this discussion. So each work that is made available to the public, each work that is released, each song that is released to the public commercially and is available, there are different contributors to that process, to that work, different contributors, the songwriter, composer, the record producer, artist, and so forth. And the copyright laws of Jamaica and elsewhere, it grants a particular period of time over which these rights remain intact, over which you have time to benefit from this song, right? And there was a time when it was only 50 years that you had, and Jamaica was in that position up to a few years ago. And we recognized as a country, and many other countries before us did, where if that continued to be the case, then a lot of our very classic Jamaican gems and treasures of songs would have gone into what is called a public domain, wherein once the song goes into public domain, it simply means that there are persons out there who could then use that song without needing to get permission from the rights owners in order to do a number of things, which before that they would have to get permission for, to make copies, to publicly perform, to distribute, and so forth. They could do all of those things without needing to get permission to do those things, and therefore in a position to commercially benefit without the actual rights owner being able to benefit. So public domain simply means that someone else can now benefit from your work without getting permission from you. So that's a part of the process. Fortunately, though, we Jams in particular was a very staunch advocate for an extension of that time period, because record producers in particular, record labels and producers, stood to lose the most when that 50 years expired. Because Jamaica's recorded music, Jamaica's recorded music industry began around 1958 or thereabouts. Yes?
Mhm.
And so, of course, by the time you hit 2008 coming on thereabouts, we had hit 50 years. And so a lot of those early songs, 58, 59, 60, 61, 62, Jimmy Cliff's and some other classic songs would have been heading into public domain.
Yeah, heading into public domain.
Yes.
Is this, we're talking now about rights reversion. No, we're talking about rights. And we're talking about the rights after the songwriter has passed. Is this what you're talking about?
We're going to split it. No, we're going to split it.
Because we need to go down there.
Yes, it's quite a bit. It's quite deep. Because on the record producer's side, it's really 50 years. It or
After
just 50
the,
years
after the song,
release.
the release of
Release.
yes, right.
Right. Whereas for the writers,
It is
their
50 years
lifetime plus the 50 years.
Plus 50 years, yes.
Right. And so even
Of the
if
last person.
The last person
who would contributed
died.
to the
As a songwriter, so if you have a group
Yes.
of
The last
songwriters,
person.
the last person,
Yeah.
this last surviving person, it's 50 years after that person has
Was,
passed.
yeah.
right.
That's for songwriters.
For
we're talking.
songwriters.
So the distinction, that's very important.
Very, very
that
important.
distinction with the owner of the master.
no.
The master.
Right. And we typically refer to them as the producers, but the owner,
Right.
the master.
Right.
It was only 50 years they had after the release in order to benefit from that. And so those producers from back then would have been at a major loss, right?
And the same would be for the performer too, as far as the rights are concerned.
Essentially, yes.
Essentially, because
Yes.
the two are
They're
coterminous.
normally bound.
Coterminous.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
yes.
Right.
Okay.
And so, with that in mind, we wanted to protect the Jamaican producers in particular from that 50-year runoff. Because to a large extent, a lot of the writers would have been still around, or one of the writers of may still be around. And so you still have that Life Plus still running. However, notwithstanding that, we lobbied and we advocated and we pushed and we got the 95 years protection, which is one of the longest in the region, right? And we're very, very happy for that. Because what it means, Clyde, Jamaica as a country is one of the few countries in this world where we have several genres of music to our disposal. But not only that we have created, but not only that. It's one of the few countries where our cultural product is such a huge part of society and our economy. And to the extent that Prime Minister Portia Simpson Miller, her administration was so enlightened and insightful that they sought to put culture as one of the economic pillars of their program at the time of the 2030 plan. Culture was one of the economic pillars, and within culture, and during that time, it was thought important to extend the term of the copyright protection to 95 years to then support that whole vision of culture and the creative industry as part of what could support our economy. We are one of the few countries who have that competitive advantage in our cultural products. And so giving it more time was seen as essential in order to properly benefit, for the rights owners to benefit, for the industry to grow and to flourish, so that Jamaica could actually be one of those countries that could rely more on its culture as an economic driver also.
But this position is not without detractors, because there are some who argue that there is not harmonization between ourselves and large markets like the United States, which do not have that kind of provision. When we come back, let us talk about that, musically speaking. Mother's Day edition of Musically Speaking, Sizzla Kalonji. Thank you, Mama. And we have a mama in studio with us today, Lydia Rose from JCAP, and a papa, Evan Mullings from Jams. And we're talking about collective management organizations, those organizations that usually deal with the business of making sure that people, that is artists, performers, producers, are paid for the use of their material, their copyrighted material. And we have touched on the subject of extensions. And, you were talking, Evan, about, the value of the extension, particularly for producers in Jamaica. And I pointed out that there was a challenge because there was not reciprocity in terms of the arrangement with other major centers such as the United States. And this might place us at a disadvantage. For example, Michael Jackson, he writes songs and they've expired, the rights have expired in the United States, but we are still paying him rights, paying for his rights here.
But there's a solution for all of that.
What's a solution?
There's a solution. So besides the US, there are other countries that have different terms of protection. And the most common period typically is now about 70 years, some 75 years. Most have moved up from 50 to 75 years or thereabouts, whereas we are now at 95. So there's still between Jamaica and many other countries this disparity in the time period. However, the WIPO allows for when you're establishing within your copyright legislation, when you're establishing these timelines and these terms of protection, it allows for each country to adopt the sort of reciprocity system that allows for you to benefit how you want it to. So let me be clear on that. There's what is called a shorter term rule. So this means that if in Jamaica we have 95 years of protection, but France is at 75 years, and French songs are being played in Jamaica, we have the option to set into our Copyright Act a rule that says
you're not going to pay it.
We will only pay to French songs the 75 years that they are granting us in their country.
On their country.
Right.
So if they have 75, we'll only pay up to 75.
So you're only paying for the 95 years. You're only dealing with that for people who recognize and respect our system. So in other words, there is a informal kind of harmonization of the rules then.
It's not informal, It's not informal.
It's not WIPO, yes.
It's where it is actually you recognize the law of the country.
Right.
So if the law of the country say it's 50, then even though the recording is in Jamaica, it will recognize that it's only 50 years while it's in Jamaica. So you recognize the law.
Okay,
of
so
each
in
country.
other words, we're not privileging people from outside whose copyright might have expired in their own territory.
Correct.
Right. So that is something that can be embedded into the legislation.
Laws.
So with the term extension, you also embed that rule.
No.
And it was also a recommendation.
No. I want clarification here. Is that a recommendation? I mean, that's a WIPO provision, but is that recognized by law in Jamaica?
Has it been incorporated?
Yes.
No.
Not as yet. There are, however, steps being taken, right? Because we have been monitoring this, and it has been a concern.
We have made the recommendation
Yes.
and lobbying.
And my best understanding is that it is on the way to be enacted as well.
But given the fact that WIPO has countenanced this, you yourself right now would be able to say, well, look, if something has expired in the United States, we're not paying.
No, we can't.
No, can't.
We can't.
Because it's not
It
the
has
law.
to be in the law for us to act in that way.
So everything is recognized for the 95 years.
So then it is only a WIPO recommendation then, which has not been taken up by law in Jamaica. So we have some legislative work to do then. I mean, based on what you are both saying, we have a lag in legislation.
Yes.
And
Correct.
what do you see as a prospect for that? Do either of you know what stages we might be in terms of getting these pieces of legislation enacted?
Well, the act was amended in 2015. And so a number of years have passed, of course, since then. And there have been a lot of push from us, from the CMOs and others, to say, and even what JIPO itself, our local IP agency, JIPO itself, has recognized that without that additional provision, it is a weakness for the country. Because what we had set out as a country to sort of gain from the 95 years.
Are you saying that we went ahead with a piece of legislation for which we weren't ready?
No, we were ready for it. But I think somehow within that,
but
that
if
whole
it
process...
if it places us at a disadvantage, and if JIPO is claiming that it places us at a disadvantage, it means that we moved ahead with the legislation without having all the other pieces in place.
Well, I don't know if JIPO is claiming that it's a disadvantage, but I'm saying that JIPO itself, at this stage, recognizes also, along with other players, that this shorter-term rule is a crucial part of what needs to be in place as well to give Jamaica the level of protection that it needs.
But we can't have the shorter-term rule without the attendant legislation.
Correct, yes. And that process is underway.
So that's a weakness in our system.
Currently, yes. It is a weakness currently, yes.
We want to go now to computational issues because the digital regime has changed a lot in terms of how we compute, calculate revenue for rights holders. I want you to share with me some of the differences, vis-a-vis streaming, downloads, all these newfangled systems of distributing music, and what have been the implications for your organization and the members.
All right, so I will start. So if we take the public performance, which we on our side we call the analog, the parties, the underground concerts, that is still in play based on the rates, etc. So if we now look at the digital side, which compares to us with the mechanical rights, etc., and also public performance. 10, 15 years ago, you could sell a record for upwards of, I would say, US $15. Even $5 10 years ago. Right? Now, when you look at the download, which is actually comparative to sale of records, so you download.
You're talking now about mechanicals.
Correct.
Okay.
Right? And to the to those the listeners who are listening, because we're trying to ensure they understand the comparison. Sale of records.
So mechanicals come from the sale of records.
Right. Correct.
Public performance comes from the playing of the records.
Right.
Okay.
Correct.
So mechanicals is a percentage of sales
of the record.
Okay. Now, given that there is now a change in terms of what constitutes a record,
sales of record,
and sales of record, so those are the things that we need to streaming and what the implications are for streaming. How does that maybe conflate the whole notion of performance and mechanical rights?
Correct.
Those are things that we need to.
That's what you're asking us to know to look
address,
at.
yes.
Right. So as I said before, where our members could earn from sale of record of upwards of 15 US or 5 US, etc. Sale of record digitally is when you download and it actually to some form of instrument, either your computer,
any kind of electronic device,
phone, right? But you actually buy it and download it.
So you're keeping
that's keeping that, yes. Right? That's sales. And I mean, in today's world, it's $2, $3, right? So that's a vast difference. And then the member is paid a small percentage. So they get like 2.02 cents, right? So in today's world, the more you download, it's actually not comparing to when there was
when we're
sales.
buying records.
Correct.
So-
and in terms
so-
of the streaming, I mean, you can know before that was like you buy your records and you put them together. Now you can be on Spotify, Apple, and you create your own playlist. Correct, and that in also of itself, the person, the writer, composer, even the master writer, it is actually, we call it pennies on the dollars that they earn now. So you actually have to be downloading much more now to earn what you would have earned in one sale of records.
So there is a significant drop, you would think, potentially for songwriters and also for producers from public performance, you'd say, and even from mechanicals.
And the thing about it, again, I go back to the tough market and environment that we operate. Jamaicans don't really like to buy or spend. So if Spotify is to work or Deezer, that's from us on cable and wireless, flow phone, etc., and even what Digicel offer, for our nationals to actually earn, they actually have to pay and to buy and consumption. So in our territory, consumption is pretty low because they tend not to want to purchase.
Yeah, but what about reciprocal arrangements?
No, we
Because
do earn.
You get from
the
so
US,
so you're
UK,
saying that, so you're saying
Europe.
in the digital realm, you might be earning more from your reciprocal
we are
arrangements
getting
than
more
from-
coming in
than
what we would earn
here.
here digitally.
That's an interesting, the consumption patterns.
Yes.
So you would say the consumption patterns have changed dramatically from the analog era into the digital era.
Yeah, definitely. And one of the important things that we try to get across, Clyde, is for persons who are putting out music, whether it's the producer, the artist, and so forth, to sort of manage their own expectations. And what I mean by this is, and we see it every day, persons will say, well, look, my songs are being streamed on YouTube, which is entirely different from, say, a Spotify.
Yes, we
Right?
need to. Yeah, I want to make
Yes.
those
to make that
distinctions.
clarification.
Right. So, I mean, a YouTube streaming is a different model from Spotify. Spotify is actually where persons actually pay on a, for instance, a monthly basis or a yearly basis, a subscription fee over to Spotify.
Right, to
be able
stream,
listen
yeah,
music
to
when they
listen to
want
the
to.
music that they want to hear.
When they want to. Whereas a YouTube is completely different. YouTube pays at a much lower rate now when each person goes on individually and stream that song whenever they want to. The model is different in the sense that
It's advertising
It
based.
Have to have
Advertising.
on your channel.
Yes.
advertising based as part of it, and there's another component which is not advertising based. You have to now be hitting a certain threshold in terms of millions of plays in order for YouTube to be paying you a share of money relating to that. So advertising is part of it, but also volume of plays is also
But
another
doesn't
component.
Spotify have that a model like that where you have the advertising model and then you have the
do.
other? Yes.
They
Yes,
do.
they
They
do.
do.
But the thing about it, for YouTube, it's not that much in terms of payment because you must understand YouTube operate under this basis of safe harbor.
Right.
And they're saying that they're not the ones who are uploading these works for consumption. So their payment is actually very low or none at all. Whereas for Spotify, Deezer, etc., that's a commitment because they
They are
actually
using-
have
yes.
Right.
using the work in the form that they are the ones who are doing the upload. So in that respect, the expectation, because a lot of our nationals do have YouTube and then they say, okay, we are earning because we are on YouTube. But there's practically no earning there. For our nationals, unless you have advertisers on your channel, you practically are not earning. You are practically using YouTube for marketing.
Let me ask
For promotion.
Let me ask a question though. With these entities such as Spotify, is there not a compression, a conflation of mechanicals now and actual public performance? Because these entities are technically they are in the business of public performance, and they are, well, I mean, well, it's a form of distribution, although because they're selling use of the songs, but they are not selling physical copies of the song.
Right. So it's not, and this is Lydia's realm, but it's not really public performance because it is more an on-demand.
It's because on demand. It's on demand,
yes,
right? So,
yes.
so in other words, it's there, and you make your playlist. Yeah. So it is not. So really, it's not public performance in the strict. Yes.
Yes, but you do when we say streaming. So streaming in our world is the public performance, because remember, for streaming you're listening and you're just constantly listening. You're not downloading. Right. When you go over to buy and download to your instrument, then that's physical sales.
Right.
So they still do have those two concepts.
Yeah, because it's still a transmission. I mean, technically, it is still a transmission of the songs.
Yes.
I mean, by digital means. So it is in a way. I mean, although it's customized, it is public performance.
Yes, it is.
You know. The question of extension, I want to go back to it because, it has not been looked upon favorably in some quarters, based on the fact that people have associated it and have called it the Disneyfication of the the rights business. You want to explain, because some of the arguments being adduced in support of having these extensions, some people consider them to be ridiculous, in the sense that one of the things that has been advanced is that it is supposed to encourage innovation. In fact, that's the argument that Disney has constantly adduced for the extensions that it has been granted by Congress. Now, the question I'm asking is, do you really support the argument that these extensions really encourage innovation, or do you think that there might be actual retardants to innovation?
Well, the argument, there's been a stronger argument against term extension, because persons who are not supportive of it suggest that by making it available for free, putting it into public domain, is what encourages innovation. We, however, on the other hand, argue otherwise.
That if there are no incentives, you don't have innovation.
And we're saying that even if there is a term of protection around the music, those who want to innovate around it, there's a process that you can use to get permission to use the content, right? You get clearance, and you know about this.
Yeah.
So you're still able to use the material to innovate. The only difference is that you have to get permission and you pay for its use. Those who would want it to be free and open are simply those who would not have wanted to pay anything to begin with. That is how we see it. Those are persons just sitting and waiting, wanting to commercialize someone else's work for their benefit. Right? So we do not think it has to be in public domain to encourage innovation at all.
No, and there are some people who are concerned about the prior licensing, or the prior granting of rights, rather than a situation where one is allowed to use the work, and then if income is generated, then it's shared. We could go on with this thing, because I wanted to deal with the Ed Sheeran and also the Steely and Clevie issues, which are very, very important. Because there are some people who think that our interpretation of these issues about rights and ownership might be too restrictive, might be too traditionalist, and many people, for example, saw the Ed Sheeran victory in the courts as a vindication that maybe we're going too far in this whole notion of protecting rights and ownership of intellectual property. What you shake your head, Lydia?
No, but we the first thing is Ed Sheeran's song is protected. So that's the first thing. What was at
Was
at the art of it is
the Marvin Gaye song.
whether he had
The
used
yes.
Marvin
Yes.
Gaye, and that will always be an issue because chords or whatever they say that can sound familiar, and in music.
But people are saying, Lydia, that if Marvin Gaye's estate had prevailed, that would have been a gut punch to songwriting and the music industry.
No. Because remember, Marvin Gaye estate brought another claim with against Blurred Lines, and they won.
Yes.
Right? Because the industry that we're in, it innovates itself all the time. There's been a lot of copyright suit that has been won, which should not have been won. And there's a lot of copyright suit that has been lost that people feel that it shouldn't be lost. So when we look at these things that are in the court, we have to look at what is at the heart of it. And it's not really protection is at the heart of it. What is at the heart of it is a commercialization or who should earn. Because either way, the song is being protected on both sides.
I feel as if, you see, but this particular case with Ed Sheeran, I feel as if this case was lost by the attorneys. I strongly believe that. I think there is more than enough basis on which this case should have been won, meaning Ed Sheeran should have lost. Because apart from the lyrics, so there was no clear usage of the melodies and so forth around it. But when you listen very keenly, and this was adduced, this was put forward, when you compare the composition, the musical composition, they were almost spot on, yes? And that is something that is protected. And so I don't think that the case was made sufficiently by the attorneys representing
Marvin Gaye's
that side of the thing, because apart from the musical composition, Clyde, you also have to consider that some of what was put forward, and I think on appeal they probably could win, and they should appeal. I think they really should appeal this, because Ed Sheeran, this would be his third, I think this is the third song.
infringement.
Yes.
That
yes.
people are carrying against. He had one in the UK, so it's really the third. Two in the US and one in the UK.
Very important to this is that while he was on tour, has been singing this song. So a part of what was not proven was the intent that he had knowingly gone ahead and used it. And I think the lawyer lost out on that. The lawyer should have been able to prove,
to establish that he
knew
he heard the song, knew the song, and took the song.
That is where the case was lost.
This could go on and on. This is a most interesting, informative program. I want to thank Lydia Rose from JCAP. I want to thank Evan Mullins from JAMS. Musically speaking, talking about CMOs, collective management organizations, and how you deal with the question of managing the rights of artists, songwriters, and producers. Thank you very much. I want to thank Kevin Williams and Danelia Doyle for being here with us, and we'll be back with you next week. This has been a special Mother's Day edition of Musically Speaking. Thank you so much for being here with us. Clyde Mckenzie saying we'll see you next week.